Hey, it's Kaylin, and I am doing the mid-year book freakout tag. And I was going to do regular videos on Fridays, and that kind of fell apart because I suck at schedules. So I just decided when I saw a bunch of these tags pop up that I was going to try one. So here is the mid-year book freakout tag. And according to my Goodreads, I have read 34 books in the in the months of January through June. So we are halfway through the year. My goal for this year is 100 books. So I am not even halfway there yet. I don't know whether I will make it or not, unless I decide to read a bunch of children's books that are short and don't take a long time to read, but I don't want to make it that easy, and I want to enjoy the books that I read. So I'll see whether I get to 100 or not. But without further ado, let's get to the book freakout tag. I was not tagged by anyone in this, but I've seen it done by several people, so I tag myself. And the first question is as follows. It is the best book that I've read so far, and that would be The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. And I know this is going around all over, or at least it was when it first came on the scene, but this was such an enjoyable read for me. It was exciting, it was a great thriller, it was a page turner, and all of the best words to describe a great read. It had its flaws, and some of the plot twists were a little predictable, but I enjoyed the experience of reading it so much that it will remain on my list as one of my favorites. And I actually have one other favorite on my list, so I'm cheating. I'm picking two books that are my best reads so far. So the other one is I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which is also a very popular book that everyone by now should know about, I would think. And this was very scary and creepy, and I am not one to usually get too scared when I read, but this one really kind of had me checking my doors at night before I went to bed, and I enjoyed the mystery, and especially it being so relevant for today as they have caught the Golden State Killer, or who is most likely the Golden State Killer. They have the suspect in custody, and we will find out more about that, I'm sure, as the months go on. But it was neat and interesting just to see all of the clues that kind of and led up to his capture, and just to see all of the speculation that police officers and investigators had about him that turned out to be true or not true. So anyway, I'll Be Gone in the Dark and The Woman in the Window were my two favorite books that I've read so far. So on to the next question, and I'm sorry I don't want to make this video too long because I have 14 other questions left. So the next question is the best sequel I've read so far, and that is an easy answer because I have not been reading series this year. I tend not to get into series because I don't want to commit to a whole series. I'm a slow reader, so I prefer standalones. So no sequels that I've read this year. New release that I haven't read yet, but I want to read, that's going to be A.J. Finn's next book. I think he is supposed to come out with one in January of 2020, but I have no information about it. I don't know what it is. It's probably another thriller is my guess. But because I enjoyed his first book, The Woman in the Window, I look forward to the next one. And the next question is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And that is The Lunch Witch Part 3. And that is the third book in this series. I guess this would be a series, so I lied. I do read series, but these can kind of stand alone by themselves as well. This is The Lunch Witch. It's a graphic novel for children, but it also has a really good sense of humor, so adults would enjoy it too. The third one is called The Lunch Witch in Limbo. So that will be coming out in September of this year, and I really look forward to it. It has fun illustrations and a really good sense of humor, and the dog graphic novel looks a lot like My Little Dog Back There, so that really appeals to me as well. So I will definitely be picking up the third book in the Lunch Witch graphic novel series. So the next question is biggest disappointment of this year, and that is going to have to be, unfortunately, The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. I love Ray Bradbury. I think he's a fantastic writer. I've read several other books by him, including short stories and a couple of novels by him that I really liked and enjoyed and appreciated. But this was a struggle for me to get through. And it's a very short book. It's maybe 150 pages, but I could not get into it. He has a very flowery kind of sing-song writing style in this. And it's very whimsical and magical, which in itself is not a bad thing. But in this case, it just kind of made me feel like I wasn't connected anywhere and just floating around in space. And I didn't really understand the whole purpose behind it. I mean, I know it goes into the history of Halloween throughout the ages. So it's sort of a history lesson in that sense. But I just didn't feel connected to the story. It took me many attempts to get through it. And again, that's kind of saying a lot because this is a pretty short book. So this would be the biggest disappointment for this year so far. And just to redeem myself, though, about Ray Bradbury, I love his book From the Dust Returned. I like his short stories. One More for the Road. I have read The Illustrated Man as well. So I think those books are solid. I have read Fahrenheit 451, but that wasn't actually my favorite, even though it's probably the most popular. But The Halloween Tree missed the mark, so unfortunately. And the next question is the biggest surprise. So the book that surprised me the most, I guess, is actually another I'm going to say an answer that I said earlier, and that is going to be The Woman in the Window. The premise had me kind of interested from the get-go, but I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. It was just kind of the newest, most popular thriller at the time, and so I decided to give it a go. My sister and I and my mom read it all together and as sort of a book club, and I just really enjoyed it, and I read it very fast, and I'm a slow reader, as I've said before, and I jumped through this pretty fast. The characters were interesting, and her experience just being a shut-in and with agoraphobia, not being able to leave her house and watching people through the windows was very Hitchcockian. It reminded me, of course, of Rear Window, which it's supposed to. And her references to old movies were very fun. And the mystery itself was something I didn't really predict. So really kind of just a great surprise. And I enjoyed it a lot. So the next question is favorite new author, or meaning like a debut author or an author that's new to you. I am going to pick an author that is new to me. He's not talked about very much, I don't think at all, that I've heard of, but I'm going to have to say, and I'm so sorry if I butcher his name, Christophe Chabot. I think he is a French artist and graphic novelist, I guess you could say. He wrote this graphic novel, Alone, which I read early this year, and it is almost entirely pictures. There are some words in it, but it is all black and white. And he has a couple other books out. One is called The Park Bench, and one is an adaptation of Moby Dick. And so I really am very interested in picking those up. These are big chunkers of books, but they don't take long to get through because, like I said, they're mostly pictures. And I just really love his style. If I can show you anything up close. This particular book is about a man who lives in a lighthouse, and he's kind of just shut in and he never communicates with anybody. And he's the keeper of the lighthouse, and he's just never been anywhere else, but he writes and he reads the dictionary and he learns words, and he has a few treasures or keepsakes that he keeps from his parents, and he has some communication with the man who brings him supplies. every few weeks or so, and he gradually kind of learns to branch out of his closed-in environment. And it's just kind of a really beautiful story that is very minimalist style. It tells so much with its drawings and its little details and uses very few words. So that was intriguing to me. Like I said, the artwork is beautiful, and I want to pick up his other two that I know of. And I think I will really enjoy them. So this is an author who's new to me, who I really enjoy. The next question is newest fictional crush, and I have nothing for this. I don't generally get fictional crushes. I mean, I have in the past, I'm not gonna lie, but for the books that I've read so far this year, I can't really think of anyone. I guess perhaps if I had to pick one person, it would be the tenant in The Woman in the Window. It's the guy who rents the room from her and in the basement. And I have no idea, what he looks like. Don't really learn a whole lot about him, but he's kind of a mystery guy, so I guess that's intriguing. So if I had to pick someone, I would pick the tenant guy in The Woman in the Window. So, okay, newest favorite character, and that is going to be a character by the name of Aura Lee Beckworth, and she is in this book, The Pecan Man. This book is an independently published book. It's rather short, but it packs a really big punch for its size. It's about a woman who lives in the South. She lives in Florida, and she has a woman who works for her who's African American, and she is very close to this woman and her family. And there's a tragedy that happens with this woman, and there's a man that Aura Lee hires to do landscaping and lawn work for her house, is suspected of a terrible crime, and it's just kind of what happens from there. But anyway, the character of Aura Lee is a great woman. She's fair, and she's a great friend to this woman that she works for, and she really demonstrates commitment to friendship and just being a really strong, good person. She is a widowed woman, so she has not been with her husband. I think he had died years before, so she's very independent and strong, and even in the face of a lot of tragedy that occurs in the book. But this book in itself, I'm stepping away from the character for a minute, just the book itself and the story is very moving, and this writer writes very well, and I think she should be more well known, and that's my favorite character, I think, of this year so far is Aura Lee Beckworth. So she's the main character in The Pecan Man, and that's my answer to that question. And a book that made me cry, well, actually I should have held on to the book because that was The Pecan Man. Again, there was kind of a lot of tragedy in this book, a lot of difficult moments, a lot of struggle for this family and for the main character in some situations outside of their control. And I believe it had me crying towards the end. And it wasn't exactly like a miserable cry. It was a hard cry, but it was kind of a cleansing, like, oh, I feel good after I read this book, that I'm glad that I cried. So it was a very moving book. So that was The Pecan Man again. Or pecan, depending on where you are or where you live in the country, you might call it pecan or pecan. I think the South calls it pecan, but I am from the Midwest, so I don't know how I say it like that. I did live in Florida, so maybe that's why. And the next question is a book that made me happy. And I am going to go with a repeat. I'm sorry I'm saying some of the same books, but that would be Alone by Christophe Chabot. I'm so sorry I can't pronounce that. I don't know how to pronounce it. But I just really enjoyed this book, and the end, it has a very uplifting ending, and just the progression of it, and just the journey that this person takes mentally and discovering new things, and just the pictures of it, of the sea and of the lighthouse, were beautiful. And I have a fondness for coastal areas like Maine, which have, beaches and lighthouses. So this kind of just made me feel good reading it. And again, I'd like to pick up more by this author. So that's Alone. And let's see, favorite book to film adaptation you saw this year. To be honest, I haven't seen very many movies this year. I don't tend to read a lot of books and say, oh, I can't wait for the movie to come out. I know there have been a lot of movies that have come out based on comic books and books like The Hunger Games and The Maze Runner and things like that. And I'm really not into those series much. So my answer for this is going to be an adaptation that was made many, many years ago, but it's still a book to movie adaptation, and that is The Wizard of Oz. And it was playing recently in my local theater, and my dad and I went and saw it. So just for a visual, I will give you the book, The Wizard of Oz. I read this years ago, but I just recently bought it because I want to reread it, especially after seeing the movie. It's timeless. It's a classic. Everyone loves The Wizard of Oz. So I would say that is my favorite book to movie adaptation. And I look forward to rereading this because I'm sure there are quite a few things that occur, and there are probably a few characters that exist in this book that didn't appear in the movie. So I look forward to reading that. Next question. We only have a few more to go here. So my favorite review I've written this year, or favorite video you've done so far this year. And I am going to say it's a toss-up between the graphic novel video I made and the true crime book video I made. Those seem to be the most popular, but they're also ones that I enjoyed talking about most. Those are two genres of books that I really enjoy. So I can link those below in case you're interested. So I would say those two were my favorite to film. I write reviews on Goodreads, but I didn't really pick a favorite. I don't review everything I write, only ones that are kind of moving me to say something about a certain book. So I didn't choose one or the other, but I do write reviews on Goodreads. So if you're interested in checking those out, I have my Goodreads also linked. And let's see, most beautiful book you've bought or received this year. And I have to go with the book that I bought while I was on vacation in Maine, and that is Robert McCloskey's Bert Dow Deep Water Man. This is a children's book, kind of obviously. And this writer wrote Make Way for Ducklings. He wrote One Morning in Maine and Blueberries for Sale, and I have mentioned him several times now on my channel. His artwork is gorgeous. This book really just captured me because of all the colors. I love color in my life, so I love, pinks and greens and bright colors like that. And also, of course, I love Maine. So here are some of the pictures in the book. And I apologize, my dog thinks he hears or sees something, so now he wants to growl. But here's some of the pictures. And what really amazes me about this book is that the pictures are a lot different than the ones in his other books, One Morning in Maine and Make Way for Ducklings. I don't know if it's that he adds color to these books, or this book, and the other ones were kind of in like a black and white. But there's just something about it. The story is very cute. It's enjoyable. I read it in like 10, 15 minutes. But it's just beautiful for its pictures and its depiction of the water and his boats. And just, you get a real sense of the feel of Maine and fisherman life and everything. So I'd say this is probably the most beautiful book that I have received or bought this year so far. And I have one more question, and it is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I picked a few here. The first is a book that I am currently reading, and I am almost halfway through with. It is The Fact of a Body. This is a memoir / true crime book. It's about a woman who becomes a law student, and she works for a firm that is concerned with getting people off of death row. And she, up until this time, is a firm believer against the death penalty. So she is very against the death penalty. She wants it abolished and everything. But she sees a picture of a man who has been accused of murder, and something about this man triggers something in her, and she decides that she wants to see him executed. And we go into her past and also the past of this killer and the killer's family. There are a lot of tragic situations in this book. There is a trigger warning for abuse in here, just so you know. But this book is, I think, Paula Hawkins on the front sums it up pretty well. It's just astounding. It's shocking the things that go on in this book, but the writing is beautiful. I look forward to seeing what happens and how she connects to this suspect, this murderer, and what makes her change her strong position on the death penalty. So again, I'm about halfway through. This is another book I'm co-reading with my sister and enjoying it very much. So that is one book I plan to read before the year is out. And the other two books I plan to read, even though there are plenty more, but I picked the ones I'm most excited about reading, and that would be Gwendy's Button Box by Stephen King and Richard Chizmar. And this is a pretty short book. I haven't heard too much about it, though it's come up maybe a couple of times. It's about this young girl who encounters a man on a park bench, and he gives her this button box. And honestly, I don't even know what a button box. I guess it's just a box for holding buttons, but I don't even. This must be kind of an old thing because I don't know that I've ever seen a button box, but must be like for sewing. But anyway, she's supposed to guard this button box and take care of it, otherwise something terrible is going to happen. And I think it follows her over the course of several years. It starts when she's 12 years old and then into her teen years. And so we're going to find out the consequences of her not watching over this button box properly. And so it's Stephen King, so it's probably going to be creepy and maybe gruesome. And I have not heard of Richard Chizmar, but we'll see how the two collaborate on this book. And this should be, again, a quick read. And it also has, for an extra little perk, some illustrations in it. And I love illustrations in books, so that helps. And so that's one book I want to read. And because it is summer and because I have heard more about this book from other booktubers, and because I love the movie so much, I have to read Jaws this summer. This is such a summer read. I don't want to wait until the end of the year to read this book. I'd like to read it before the summer is out because, of course, it takes place in the summer at the beach in, I think, Martha's Vineyard. And, of course, it's about a shark that tries to eat everybody. So if you haven't seen the movie, see the movie, even if you don't read the book, or read the book and then see the movie. I, of course, saw the movie when I was a child. I haven't read the book yet, and it's time to read this. So that is the end of my tag. If you would like to do this tag, you are watching this, I consider you tagged. I don't really like tagging people, but if you want to do this tag, do the tag. And I enjoyed this a lot. I hope you did too. And I will see you in my next video. I hope to talk more about graphic novels, maybe some more thriller or true crime types of stuff, because that's kind of what I've been most interested in of late. So anyway, that's all I've got for today. Have a great day and happy reading. Bye.